Hello and welcome, everyone. I hope that you're having a beautiful night, day, evening, wherever it is when you are watching this. My name is Jasmine. For those of you who don't already know, I'm a this and I'm a that. All my links are down in the description. But I would like for all of my wonderful, lovely, special guests to go ahead and introduce themselves. So whoever wants to start first, go ahead.
Well, hello. My name is Sydney, also known as Craft and Magic. You can find me on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Always having a kiki about the occult. I teach the Elder Futhark runes. I work with the Norse gods most of the time. Recently, Loki's popped up, as well as Freya. So, as you do. Samuel, you're off.
Well, I just be talking to myself, honey. Like, I know my mic is off, and I'm like, oh my God, yes. Yes, girl, yes. So anyway, my name is Samuel. I am a pagan witch, a devotee of the Morrigan, and an espiritista, and that. I'm a senior in college, and my minor is religious studies with a focus in African diaspora religions and goddess worship.
OMG, Sam. OMG. That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, anyway. I'm the Nerdy Warlock. Hello. And you can find me on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, your grandma's backyard, everywhere. And I am all about Celtic magic. And if you want to talk about the Celts, then you should come find me because I'll talk about them all day.
You know the vibes. So today we are cracking open the book, Women Who Run with the Wolves, once again, and we are going to be taking a deep dive into the folktale Sealskin, Soulskin. So for those of you who are already familiar with that folktale, that's what we're going to be talking about. I'm going to be reading the story, and together we are going to be making our commentary about what this folktale's lesson is, what it means, and if you're not already familiar with Sealskin, Soulskin, I'm sure you can probably pirate it someplace online. Okay. So let's get right into the good book. So Sealskin, Soulskin starts on page 258 of Women Who Run with the Wolves. Are you guys ready? Let me wet my whistle a little bit. Get you a little cocktail or something, okay? Okay. During a time that once was and is now gone forever and will come back again soon, there is day after day of white skies and white snow. And all the tiny specks in the distance are peoples or dogs or bears. Here nothing thrives for the asking. The winds blow hard, so the people have come to wear their parkas and memleks, boots sideways on purpose now. Here words freeze in the open air, and the whole sentences must be broken from the speaker's lips and thawed at the fire, so people can see what has been said. Here the people live in the white and abundant hair of old Analuk, the old grandmother, the old sorceress who was known as the earth itself. And it was in this land that there lived a man. A man so lonely that over the years, tears had carved great chasms into his cheeks. He tried to smile and be happy. He hunted, he trapped, and he slept well, but he wished and longed and yearned for human company. Sometimes out in the shallows in his kayak, when a seal would come near, Okay. He remembered the old stories about how seals were once human, and the only reminder of that time was in their eyes, which were capable of portraying those looks, those wild and wise, loving looks. All right. Sometimes he felt such a pang of loneliness that those tears coursed down the well-used cracks in his face. One night he hunted past dark and found not a thing. As the moon rose in the sky and the ice floes glistened, he came to a great spotted rock in the sea, and appeared to his keen eye that upon that old rock there was a movement of the most graceful of kinds. He paddled slow and deep to be closer, and there atop the mighty rock danced a small group of women, naked, as the first day they lay upon their mothers' bellies. Well, he was quite the lonely man, with no human friends, but in memory he stayed and watched. The women were like beings entirely made out of the moon's milk, and their skin shimmered with little silver dots, like those on the salmon in springtime. And the women's feet and hands were long and graceful. Let me find out I was here. Okay. So beautiful were these women that the man sat stunned in his boat, the water lapping, taking him closer and closer to the rock. He could hear the magnificent women laughing. At least they seemed to have been laughing. Or was it the water laughing at the edge of the rock? The man was confused, for he was so dazzled, but somehow the loneliness that had weighed on his chest like a wet hide had lifted away, and almost without thinking, as though he was meant, he jumped upon the rock and stole one of the sealskins laying there. He hid behind an outcropping, and he pushed the sealskin into his quadanok parka. Soon one of the women called in a voice that was the most beautiful voice he had ever heard, like the whales calling at dawn. Or no, maybe it was more like a newborn wolf rumbling in the spring. Well, no, it was something better than that. But it did not matter, because what and where were those women now? Why, they were putting on their sealskins, and one by one, the seal women were slipping into the sea, yelping and crying happily. Except for one, the tallest of them. Okay, wait. Let me see where I left off. Hold, please. Yeah. The tallest of them searched high and searched low for her sealskin, but it was nowhere to be found. The man felt emboldened by what he did not know. He stepped from the rock, appealing to her. Oh gosh, this is kind of cringe, y'all. Okay. Woman, ... be ... my wife ... I am a lonely man. Oh, I cannot be a wife, she said, for I am the other, the ones who live Timiniswaknik beneath. Be my wife, insisted the man. In 7 summers, I will return your sealskin to you, and you may stay or you may go as your wish and return back with your sisters. The young seal woman looked into his face with eyes that for her true origins seemed human. Reluctantly, she said, I will go with you. After 7 summers, I will make my decision. She's nicer than me. Okay. All right. So in time, they had a child named Oric, and the child was lithe, and fat. In winter, the mother told Oric tales of the creatures that lived beneath the sea, while their father whittled a bear in white stone with his long knife. When his mother carried the child, Oric, to bed, she pointed out through the smoke hole to the clouds and all of the various shapes. Except instead of recounting the shapes of ravens, bears, and wolves, she recounted the shapes and stories of the walrus, the whale, the seal, and the salmon. For those were the creatures that she had known, those were the creatures that she was raised with. But as time went on, her flesh began to dry out. First, it flaked. Then it cracked. Honey, get you some Gold Bond, okay? The skin of her eyelids began to peel. The hairs of her head began to drop to the ground. She became Naluk, palest white. Her plumpness began to wither. She tried to conceal her limp. Each day, her eyes, without her willing it so, became more and more dull. She began to put out her hand in order to find her way, for her sight was darkening. And so it went until one night when the child, Oric, was awakened. Let's turn the page. Oh, please. By a shouting, and sat upright in his sleeping skins. He heard a roar like a bear that was his father berating his mother. He heard a crying like silver rung on stone that was his mother. You hid my sealskin 7 long years ago, and now our 8th winter comes. I want what I am made of returned to me, cried the seal woman. And you, woman, would leave me if I gave it to you, boomed the husband. I do not know what I would do. I only know I must have what I belong to, cried the seal woman. And you would leave me wifeless and the boy motherless. You are a bad woman, proclaimed the man. And with that, her husband tore the hide flap of the door aside and disappeared into the night. The boy loved his mother much. He feared losing her, and so he cried himself to sleep, only to be awakened by the wind. A strange wind. The wind, it seemed to call to him, Oric, Oric. And out of bed he climbed so hastily that he put his parka on upside down and pulled his mukluks only halfway up. Crazy, oh my God. Hearing his name called over and over again, he dashed out into the starry, starry night. Oric. The child ran out to the cliff overlooking the water, and there, far out in the windy sea, was a huge, shaggy silver seal. Its head was enormous. Its whiskers drooped to its chest, and its eyes were deep yellow. Hello, Jaundice. Hello, honey. Hello. The boy scrambled down the cliff and stumbled at the bottom over the stone that had rolled off a cleft in the rock. The boy's hair lashed at his face like 1,000 rains of ice. The boy scratched open the bundle and shook it out, and it was his mother's seal skin. And he could smell her all throughout it. Ew. And as he hugged the sealskin to his face and inhaled the scent of his mother, her soul slammed through him like a sudden summer wind. He cried with pain and joy and lifted the skin again to his face. And again her soul passed through his. He cried again, for he was being filled with the unending love of his mother. And the old silver seal, way out, sank slowly beneath the water. The boy climbed the cliff and ran toward home with the sealskin flying behind him, and into the house he fell. His mother swept him and the skin up and closed her eyes in gratitude for the safety of both. She pulled on her sealskin. Oh, mother, no, please don't, cried the child. She scooped up the child and tucked him under her arm and half ran and half stumbled towards the roaring sea. Oric cried, Mother, don't leave me. And at once you could tell that she wanted to stay with her child, but she also wanted something deeper, as something darker called to her, something older than her, and older than he, and older than time itself. No, 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 cried the child. She turned to him with a look of dreadful love in her eyes. She took the boy's face in her hands, breathed her sweet, salty breath into his lungs, once, twice, and 3 times. Then, with him under her arm like a precious bundle, she dove into the sea, down, 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 and still deeper, down. And the seal woman and her child breathed easily and naturally under the water's edge. They swam deep and strong until they entered the underwater cove of seals, where all manner of creatures were dining and singing, dancing and speaking. And the great silver seal that had called to Oric from the night sea embraced the child and called him grandson. Oh my God. How far you up there, daughter? Asked the great silver seal. The seal woman looked away and said, I heard a human man, who gave all of his life to me, but I cannot return to him, for I will be a prisoner if I do, cried the seal woman. And the boy, the old matriarchal seal asked, my grandchild? He must go back. He cannot stay. His time is not yet to be here with us, the seal woman wept. And together, all of the seals wept. And so some days and some nights passed, 7 to be exact, during which time the luster came back to the seal woman's hair and eyes. As she turned a beautiful dark color, her sight was restored, her body regained its thick plumpness. She swam uncrippled, unburdened. Yet it came time to return the boy to land. And on that night, the old grandmother seal and the boy's beautiful mother swam with the child between them. Back they went, back up and up to the topside world, where they gently placed Oric on the stony shore underneath the full moon's light. His mother assured him, I am always with you. Only touch what I have touched. My fire sticks, my ulu, my knife, my stone carvings of the otters, seals, and whales. I will breathe into your lungs a wind for the singing of your sorrows and your songs. The old silver seal and his daughter kissed the child many times. At last, they tore themselves away, leaving the child, and swam out to sea. And with one last look at the boy, they disappeared under the waters. It was not Oric's time, so he stayed on the shore. As time went on, Oric grew up to be a mighty drummer and singer, a storyteller, and it was said this all came to be because as a child he survived being carried out to the sea by the great seal spirits. Now, in the gray mists of morning, sometimes he can still be seen, with his kayak tethered, kneeling upon a certain rock in the sea, seeming to speak to certain female seals who often come near the shore. Though many have tried to hunt her, time after time, they have always failed. She is known as the Tanakikak, or the Bright One, the Holy One, and it is said that though she be a seal, her eyes are capable of portraying those human looks, those wise and wild, loving looks. That's the end of the story. Wow. Wow. Lot to unpack there. Lot to unpack. First of all, how about you just keep your hands to yourself? No, anyway. What do you guys think of this folktale? Like in general, just like what are your thoughts?
Toxic masculinity at work. Dang. He really thought he could just snatch up some woman and be like, you my wife now? You gonna have kids with me for 7 years? That's messed up. That's messed up. Also, I feel like she should have fought him. I wouldn't have been like, "Oh, you're right. You got my skin. I gotta go." I'd have been like, "We fighting? I'm taking that skin back right now. Right now." Like what? What?
I think that, I mean, honestly, it's a great analogy to what women really did have to go through historically, you know, where women did have to compromise quite frequently and way too often their own autonomy to try and survive or get somewhere that wasn't just bottom rung. You know, I mean, obviously this is indigenous, and most indigenous cultures have a female equity to men. So I think that this is pretty interesting that they're showing a man being like overpowering and aggressive in this manner. But yeah, I mean, I think it's. I mean, I agree with you, Jake, that is like really messed up. However, I think that also it presents um, a good perspective on the fact that women did have to go through really bullshit experiences to try and get anywhere, even if it was caused by the man. The problems were caused by him, and yet ladies have to deal through what they caused to try and survive. Uh, and I think that she was a very strong Selkie, getting through the male aspect of this.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting too that the son did not seem to inherit excuse me, did not seem to inherit his father's well, I was gonna say his father's like bad stuff, but I don't think it was intentional on the father's part to be like that. Like he wasn't intentionally being like, let me suppress this woman's power, I guess. But
I definitely think he was. He literally saw her and was like, "Hey, woman, be my wife."
I think it's interesting that the son seemed to straddle both worlds as he got older. You know, like he seemed to understand more. I get like he seemed to gain an understanding. It's almost like he got shamanistic kind of abilities. Do you know what I mean? Like he got this ability to like walk both worlds. I feel like his Inuit tribes world and like this mystical seal world. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have anything to say, Sydney?
I don't know. This wasn't one that I like really connected with. I just kind of felt like it was more straddling the physical and the astral for the child, and them essentially trying to pull back their mother's like soul or their grace in order to kind of take on um, possibly these silky mystical kind of powers to kind of take them forward, like hereditary, your like bloodline essentially. um like, are you born into the craft or are you made with a craft, you know? And I think in this sense that because this was like literally stripped from her, that he took it upon himself to kind of like learn about it, to bring it back in to work in his favor. um But I don't know. I had like a mini Pisces delusion towards the end, so I don't know or remember much of the ending. I just remember just kind of being like, "Oh, we're back. Where'd we go?"
I think that, I mean, you posed a great point about being like being chosen versus being born. And I think that neo pagans have a misconception of being chosen or being born, because it's kind of the same thing, you know. Like, I mean, I would totally agree with what Jake said about the shamanistic aspect. Like, a lot of indigenous cultures were like, you are a shaman, you got taken by the spirits into the spirit world, and you have been gifted with this connection now, so you're it now. You don't have a choice in it. It is now you. Congratulations, you can do this. So I mean, I agree 100%. I agree 100% with the whole shaman. I mean, he may have been born this way because his mom was a selkie, but also in that same aspect was chosen because she was like, I'm going to take you under the water into this mystical realm with all these mystical beings and continue to breathe my life into you, my breath into you, which is extremely symbolic. So I agree with that.
Her salty breath. Like, okay.
This was very descriptive and low-key sexual. Like the whole
Yeah, and I don't know if you guys felt this way from the story or not, but I was almost also getting like mild. Oh, I don't know if I can say that word. Starts with an I and ends with a T. Between the son and the mother, like some very like, you know what I'm saying? Like very
Really?
close vibes. He was holding her skin and whiffing it and smelling like, I don't know.
I think that's a fantastic point that you bring up, Jasmine, because I mean, like, I agree 100%, but we also have to like along that same vein, we have to think about like the spirit world's code of ethics versus human code of ethics. And I'm not saying that word is particularly like amazing for human beings, obviously, but in the spirit world, you don't know. You just don't know. So I think that like applying a human concept to something that the spirit world may be like, what does it matter? Like, how many gods are brothers and sisters, but also wives and husbands and granddaughters? Like the whole like God tree is so like interconnected. It's crazy.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's a fantastic point that you bring up about like that word, or like, because for them, they may be like, okay, yeah, I bet he's gonna get old enough, and now you are going to be with me now for this moment to procreate.
Right. Well, and something interesting too is like in the book, hold on, let me add Sydney back to the, let's see.
Poor little baby got kicked out. Welcome back, honey.
I was saying that in the book, so in Women Who Rode the Wolves, like each folktale, each story is very much to your own interpretation, which I think is what's so cool about folktales, and why I really enjoy folklore versus mythology. But the author also incorporates her own meaning to what she believes the folktale is, and some key words of her definition and her understanding, going back to what I felt about that word that starts with an I and ends with a T that we're not going to say on YouTube Live because the algorithm gods get really upset when you talk about that. But she says that this is a story about initiation. And so I think it's interesting how I feel like in a way there's multiple initiations in this story kind of taking place between the seal woman initiating to be a spirit of the water to a spirit of the land. And like, what a weird shift that must have been like to go from being, a water spirit to a human mortal female. I mean, can't relate. I've never had to make that transition. No, I'm kidding. But also the transition of like motherhood, like where she bears the child of her kidnapper and abuser, really. Because he took her forcefully and she had no say in the matter. And then, there's the transition of the young boy who's like transitioning into adulthood. And I feel like where he was sniffing his mother's seal skin, I mean, it just felt very like coming of age, that I word that ends with a T, where like young boys sometimes psychologically associate things.
Their mom.
Yeah. In ways, we'll say. Not all young boys, but like it is a thing profoundly in psychology.
It's a psychological thing, yeah.
And then there's almost like the initiation of like the seal woman back to the ancient waters and back to the seal cove. And then there's kind of the initiation where Auric kind of becomes this he becomes a drummer and he becomes a singer and a storyteller to his people through the abilities he's gotten from his mother being a Selkie.
Mhm.
They don't ever outright say that she's a Selkie, but I think that's what she is.
I mean, like, also, like, this story may not have had a word for that. I don't know how old this, like, folk tale is, but, like, the word Selkie, our term Selkie, may be a pretty new word for sealskin woman. Like, I'm actually in a class for Native American women in religion, and one goddess, I cannot remember who she belongs to, is like the white calf, the young white calf woman, or something like that. Like it's word descriptive. It's not names, because they represent a concept of something, not necessarily a named aspect. So
The
I think.
Buffalo Woman?
What'd you say?
The Buffalo Woman?
Buffalo Woman's another one. Yes, yes.
Okay, another one. Okay.
There's a
That's all I
corn
can think of.
goddess as well. So it's very much a, that's what you rule. That's kind of what we're going to call you, because
Mhm.
you don't need a name. You don't have to have a name. You don't, if you don't want to be called a name in specific. But I like that you use the term initiation as well. I think that's a fascinating an astute observation of the story initiation, because you're right. Like the whole coming of age, her coming out of the water and becoming a mother and then going back into the water. I think I mean, if we can even like be like extra fate worthy, and being like, the reason that she said yes is because she knew that she was going to have this baby who was going to be a shaman and who was going to tell the tales that she had, so you never know.
Do you think that she knew that she was going to have a son named Oric who was going to be this powerful shaman? Like, what are your guys' thoughts? Do you think that she knew all along, or do you think that what do you think? I personally don't agree. I don't think that she knew that her son was going to be who he was. I personally think that she was very much just like a victim and turned, worked that out and worked the house down. Yes, God boots, and did her little sealskin, skullskin kind of thing, and got her skin back, got her groove back, got her mojo back. But I wouldn't say that I don't see anything in the story that insinuates that she knew that she was going to have this legendary son.
I don't know. I hope she didn't know, because because that would be really kind of like crappy to think, well, I'm going to have this son who's of importance, so let me like martyr myself so that I can have him. Like, bleh. Anyone else have thoughts?
I was thinking about it because I'm like, huh. I mean, yeah. I mean, kind of garbage, But I don't know. I feel like I agree. I feel like she was taken advantage of just because some dude wanted to get his rocks off and quit being lonely. I mean, like, how intense is that loneliness if there are like grooves carved into your face from where your tears fall? I mean, they could not
Do you guys think the man was like haunted?
Haunted?
Yeah. Like, do you think that something possessed him or he was haunted? I mean, you're right, Samuel. Like, that's pretty intense to have cracks formed in your face from years of lonely crying.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like that was supposed to make me feel not as bad as about him stealing a wife.
Yeah.
Like, maybe he was just setting it up, being like, look how sad I was. I needed to do this. Like, girl, I don't care how grooved up your face was. That doesn't make it right. Get the skin back.
Yes. It's interesting that, like, at the beginning of the story, I thought that they were talking about like the other world, the other as in like not the physical world, just because the way that they described it as being all white white being a very otherworldly color, them wearing their boots sideways, which I didn't understand how that would even work. But I was like, okay, that's not of the norm. They're not in the normal world, you know? So in the beginning, I thought that they were a part of already like a liminal space. I didn't see them as a part of like the physical reality until later in the story. So I think that kind of goes along with the whole where are they at kind of dealio, because I feel like the place significantly matters in the folktale, which is obvious because a folktale kind of belongs specifically to a place, tribe, culture, entity, X, Y, and Z.
I think ultimately, like, my biggest takeaway from this story, just in general, like when I go back and remember this story tomorrow, I think what's going to jump out at me is just the idea that, like, female or not, the message for me is like, never compromise what makes you special for someone else, and also like never willingly give up a part of yourself just to make room for someone else either. You know what I mean?
Do you think, Warlock, that the seal woman did that? Do you think that she compromised and gave up a part of herself, or do you think that she didn't have a say in the matter?
Both. Actually, both. I mean, definitely, I think if you're just reading it, it sounds like she had no say. Definitely. I mean, like, she was just forced into it. He had her skin. What was she going to do? But at the same time, and I know that these stories come from a certain time period, so they're written in a certain way. But at the same time, if he had her skin, I feel like if this story was told by someone else, she could have, fought back. She could have cursed him. She could have done something. So I feel like some of it may have been willing. I mean, maybe it's like a Little Mermaid situation where she was curious, about the human world. So she was like, well, I'm going to see what this is about. Who knows? Who knows?
Well, and I'm pretty sure, too, that, like, with Selkies, they're pretty much, like, invincible unless their skins are taken.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But I just wonder if she operates under the same rules, because Selkies are, like, Greco-Roman Celtic. And this seems like I think it's an Inuit story, right? So I just wonder what the rules are for that tribe's beliefs of, like, shapeshifters. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if we can equate it even to, like, Selkie lore. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I need to do a little bit more research about, like, the actual origin, because I don't think the folktale really gave a clear definition of that.
They said Inuit, and in Ulu, I mean, they didn't say Inuit, sorry. I think they just said tribe. And in Ulu is a specific type of knife that's used to cut blubber off of, it's a woman's knife, actually. I learned that from TikTok.
Yeah, I saw that TikTok too. You're right.
It's just a little carved knife that they carve blubber off of whale meat. I think it's whale meat. But anyway, I digress. I think that it was taken originally, but I think she was obligated to stay after she agreed to 7 years. Because I think there was a lot of symbology in the numbers that they gave us specifically. So 7. So I think that kind of dealing with the otherworldly, like, rule of contracts, like, even in all cultures, are like, otherworldly beings will honor contracts. It doesn't matter where you come from, what age, time period, culture, if you agree to something, if you sign something, boom, you agree to it. So I feel like she probably couldn't do anything after she agreed, I'll marry you for 7 years. But around that 8th year, she probably could have done something, but because I felt that she was bound by some type of contractual law.
Yeah, because I think it was like the 8th winter where she was like, hey, bro, give me back my skin.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting that she couldn't hear, like, the matriarchal seal, but her son did. And he was the one that found her skin. So maybe that was another thing as well. Like once it's taken from them, they can't get it back. Someone else has to get it for them because they lost it. You know, kind of otherworldly punishment. Like you can have it back if someone else can get it for you. You can't have it if you get it all of your own accord type of deal because you got it taken from you in the first place. So going really deep into otherworldly laws and rules right now. But yeah, that. So that. I'll get off on a tangent if you let me, you guys.
I just can't get over the fact that her breath was hot and salty.
I'm surprised her breath was salty after being 8 years out of the water. Like, is that...
Look, you can take the girl out of the ocean, but you can't take the ocean out of the girl.
Period. I wonder if she was born a seal first. Or a lady first.
Or a seal lady.
A seal lady. Because like the skin has to come off, so I bet they start off as seals.
Also, I'm curious too, because at no point do they mention like any male seals. So are these just like primordial beings? Are they like procreating like slugs?
Well, I know like in some of the like in the Selkie myths and some other shapeshifter myths, they are all female and they are like sirens where they seduce a human male to procreate. Like they have to have relations with a human male.
Which is probably where the sun comes in involved at, you know, like.
And I think the reason he didn't become a Selkie like outright is because he was male, right? Probably.
Mm-hmm. I totally think that Selkie is a wholly female entity.
Yeah.
Because I mean that makes sense. I mean that makes sense to me, and I feel like a majority of water elementals are equated to feminine things. Not that there aren't masculine water entities, because there totally are. But I feel like most like folkloric entities, like spirits type dealio, are typically female spirits that are in the water.
Well, and I feel like too, like the element of water itself is oftentimes depicted in a more feminine nature too.
I mean, water's emotional. I mean that, and women are typically attributed to be the emotional aspect of the elemental spectrum. So it makes sense to me.
Right. Know? Obviously, men are not allowed to have feelings, you guys.
We're not allowed to cry, except for that man. He had crevices in his face from crying too much. Too much.
I think that old man with crevices in his face also, like, and I have no reason to support what I'm about to say per the story, but I feel like, sir, are you an alcoholic? Like, do you have a drug problem, sir? Why do you have crevices in your face from sorrow?
Maybe I mean, their descriptions, the whole story were extremely intense.
Yeah.
So maybe, I mean, I kind of agree with Warlock about him saying, about Jasmine saying, God, I can't remember what you said anymore. Damn.
Was it when I was talking about how, like, about the crevices in his face?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm like, I feel like they added that descriptor in just so we would not feel as bad about him doing what he did later. Like, it was to help us sympathize with him and be like, oh, but he needs someone.
Yeah. Oh, we're all lonely. We all feel like that, you know?
I think one of the lessons here, you guys, is no matter how lonely you are, please don't kidnap people.
Do not kidnap otherworldly entities. Do not make deals with otherworldly entities if you are lonely.
And if you are going to make deals, please invite me. I would like to be a part of it.
She probably went back after she was looking snatched again, and she probably stabbed him in his sleep. Hear about that, but Jasmine could annotate that at the bottom of it. She came back years later and murked him in his sleep. Ate his head off. Period.
She could just flop her blubber on his face and smother him.
I mean, she's huge. Wasn't she just fall right on it.
Yeah.
Well, and after 7 days of being back in the ocean, the story does say that she retained her plumpness.
She got
And
thick and juicy.
I can relate as someone who is plump, you know. It'd be like that sometimes. Give me 7 days.
Yeah.
When we were locked down for 2 months, your girl got a little plump.
We all did, honey.
Oh yeah.
No silky skin needed, honey.
No silky skin needed.
No silky skin needed.
Also, why are you taking off your silky skin?
Yeah.
It was a whole bunch of women up on this rock with their silver bodies doing what?
Maybe
sunbathing.
they're doing a ritual, like a full moon ritual, and they were skyclad.
Maybe they wanted to have sex with men to
Yeah,
procreate.
Yeah.
Okay,
What if it was like a
sirens
thing? You know,
So
like
do you
every
think that
7
they were
years.
doing this ritual? Do you guys think they were doing this ritual to try to lure him in then?
Definite. I mean, someone. I think they were definitely like.
Because I feel like, you know, here I am, bathing in the full moonlight, doing hot girl stuff, minding my own business.
As you should.
And then this decrepit man with crevices in his face sneaks up and takes the tallest one. I feel like that's kind of against the laws of nature. Don't mountain lions normally go after the sick and the small and the weak?
Maybe that's why they went after him, because he had crevices in his face. They're like, he is slim pickings, girl. We just got to get naked in front of him, and he is going to be like, no spell needed, no menstrual blood needed. We just naked up in this moonlight.
I feel like this also kind of reminds me of this sci-fi movie. I don't know if you guys ever saw this movie. It was from like the 90s or early 2000s. I think it was called Species.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
where like the alien women like come to Earth and like, you know, capture these poor unfortunate men and forcefully procreate with them in order to continue on their species.
Mm-hmm.
So are you trying to insinuate that's what these seal women were doing? They were doing some sort of occult ritual to summon like, why him of all people? Like, he has crevices in his face. Can we not get like the cute sailor who has like a job or something?
I think it's because, I mean, if you think about it, if their only drive was to procreate, girl, who does it matter what they look like? They're just like, we need the seed to plant in the ground.
See, I don't know. I think the seed and the origin of, and I think seed is a good word for it for a YouTube live, but I think that the seed's origin is very important. Like, if I was like a seal woman, hypothetically, I wouldn't even know what that's like or anything.
Not that I have my skin in the bathtub.
Right, I have no idea. But I would like want the creme de la creme for me. Like, if I was like, I'm out here, I'm trying to get pregnant, like 9 months baby, like, you know, I would want like, I don't know, a warrior, someone physically apt and strong, not like an old man with like, you know, dust and cobwebs and this and that. Like, I would want.
But maybe she was like, I'm gonna take that old man because he ain't gonna be around forever to boss me around. Who knows? But I think if you look at the chat, Uncle Badger made a really good point, I thought. He said, could the crevices on his face reference mean about him looking craggy and rocky? Could it be a reference between Earth, him being Earth, and she being water, and the coming together of the two of them, you know, like Earth and water?
Oh, that is a really good.
Yeah.
Maybe because I feel like indigenous cultures always equate women to Earth, like because they give birth.
Oh, yeah, like very.
Well, they did reference the Earth Mother, like in the beginning of the folktale too.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, I like that idea. But I think it was just supposed to be like over dramatic.
Me too.
I mean, how is it like a man to be over dramatic about being lonely? I I have cried for so many days. I have crevices in my face because
Yeah.
I am just withered to a husk of loneliness.
I know. And of course, that would be the one time he admits that he has emotions and cries. He'd be like, baby, I don't ever cry about nothing, but I cried so dang hard. I got wrinkles in my face, baby. That's how much I need you. That's how much I need you tonight.
Well, and also too, not since Miss Rona, but prior to Rona, this has been my experience at every bar ever. There's always some decrepit man. Like, I'm just here at this bar doing my full moon stuff, doing my city girl stuff with my friends. You know, we're doing our little ritual, our little tap dance with our shots. We're kikiing, we're spilling tea. And then lo and behold, some man comes along with crevices in his face, looking highly unsettling and highly suspicious, and tries to pull one of us from the group.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let us just be selkies. Like,
let me just be silver skinned in the moonlight, okay? But I guess, like, if you think about it, honey, if you really needed like some of the good stuff that only men can bring, and you needed it for some type of work, and you could just be like, and you didn't need creme de la creme, you just needed that particular ingredient. You just be like, okay, come here, craggly old stinky man. Yes, in the bottle for me. Thank you. Thump him in the forehead and walk out.
I don't know. I don't know. I think I'm probably more like in the bougie seal women group, because I definitely want the creme de la creme. I definitely want the creme de la creme. Like, I'm not an Anna Nicole
Your
Smith
skin's
here.
gold, honey. It's not silver. It is
Right.
bitch.
Right. And I'm not trying to do like an Anna Nicole Smith moment here. You know what I mean? Like, no.
But maybe, like, you know how later on we saw the grandma seal?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe grandma seal was like, girl, this is your time. You gotta go. He gonna take yours. Maybe grandma seal was the boss, and she was like, baby, this is for you. I'm sorry about it, but it's your time. It's your time.
She was the matriarch.
Yeah.
Yeah. My takeaway from the story is don't trust scraggly, crinkly old men. Don't trust scraggly, crinkly old men. Withhold your own sovereignty, even if it is hard to do. I feel like sometimes it's much easier for us to just be like, let it roll off our back, and just be like, okay, whatever, and kind of go with the flow. And in all reality, you're like, I could just punch you in the throat right now if you said that to me again, but you kind of just let it roll off your back because we feel like that's the adult thing to do and be kosher about all things. But you have to honor yourself and respect yourself more so than a lot of other things. So hold on to your sovereignty, because that's power for you. And if someone rips it away, then you're going to be searching for it because someone took it, so it could be taken again. So you're gonna guard it too much, because if you just wear it like armor, it can't be taken from you because it's just there and it will constantly be there.
I want to say that one of our viewers, Cara Fisher, said, I think that he was just a means to an end. They needed a man to continue the tradition of the music, storytelling, and keeping traditions alive. And I think that's kind of, Samuel, like what you were saying too. Like, yes, he was a decrepit old man, and like, Jasmine, like, stop being so bougie and expecting the creme de la creme from these men folk. I totally get it. You know, I totally get it.
Especially a tribe. Imagine how many like creme de la cremes are there.
You know, and like, what could this man offer? Initially, I'm thinking like, well, you can't really offer anything except your baby gravy, and baby gravy is kind of dime a dozen. I mean, honestly, but I guess the fact that he would be easy pickings and having a child would help them continue, like Cara was saying, the tradition of storytelling and keeping traditions alive. I think that that is valuable. My thing is just like, can we not have a man like not have crevices in his face? Maybe, like,
maybe she was into that. You don't know. Maybe she was like, I like them old ones.
you know.
She could also have thought that all human men are ugly and disgusting and didn't think that one was any better looking than the other. And was just
And
like,
is she wrong? Is she wrong? No, I'm kidding.
I mean, if you think about it, imagine an otherworldly being whose skin is just silver and then just looking at us and being like, what?
Literally what I think every day.
So
No, I'm kidding.
she could have been like, man, right there, because you all look the same. Let's get it going. Let's just get it done with.
For 7 summers, what a commitment.
Seriously. It was 7 summers and then 7 days to recover, too. There's a lot of 7.
So it's also interesting because it's like, okay, so 7 years in the human realm and then 7 days in the nature spirit water cave, and she's rejuvenated and she's got her black eyes and her plump skin back.
Yeah. I mean, doesn't that fit the otherworld vibe though? Like, so to a T. I think it's pretty interesting too that cross cultures generally have the same few rules that are followed between the otherworldly being species area. And so I think the time aspect again is fascinating.
Definitely. Well, I'm looking at the time here, and we're about at 56 minutes, and I try to keep these streams at about an hour, but this has been thoroughly enjoyable. Do either of you guests have anything you would like to add in summary of this story?
If you're out and about and you see a bunch of women together living their life, doing the thing, and they're not calling you over themselves, maybe just leave them alone. Unless they're like, hey, you right there. Come here with the wrinkles. Come here.
With face crevices.
Otherwise, maybe don't.
Leave otherworldly things to their own natural devices, because like if you enact upon it, they will enact upon you. So if you want to finagle around with some water entities, go right ahead, but don't do it if you don't know what's going on, okay? Otherwise, you're going to be under that water, and not in the sexual manner that it was with her son. It'll probably be a lot scarier, honey.
Yes, that reminds me of very quickly, like in ancient Ireland kind of time. Well, not ancient, like Victorian, so not that long ago. Like in Victorian Ireland, there were always these stories of like, in real life, men would be like, I'm gonna get me a fairy wife. I'm gonna get me a fairy wife. And they would like do these like superstitious rituals to like try to marry a fairy. Maybe don't do stuff like that with water spirits or fairies or anything. Don't do that. Because you probably can't handle the repercussions.
Because you don't know the repercussions, because they're otherworldly. They don't do all that right, yes, no dealios.
Well, and I think a big part of it too is like, this is kind of a story about consent too. So like, you know, if there's a group of naked, silver-skinned, sun or moon bathing seal women, you know, if it's consensual for you to join them, then great. But if they're not really in the mood to get impregnated by you, maybe don't. So yeah, I think we're gonna wrap it up there.
Good note to end on.
Yeah. Maybe don't impregnate people non-consensually. Yeah, so we'll definitely do another folklore live like this, probably in like another month. So maybe like the end of March, beginning of April-ish. I'll make a post about it on my Patreon, because I try to let all of my Patreons know the schedule. I mean, they normally know the schedule before I do, honestly. So, but I'll post about it in the community aspect underneath my YouTube channel, like the community tab. I think it's March 2nd. It's a Tuesday night. We have the Do All Witches Think the Same live. That will be the next live coming. And there should be some videos being posted on a weekly basis coming off of the Patreon onto YouTube. So for those of you already subscribed to my Patreon, you get the first access and release of all of the videos. And for those of you who aren't subscribed, which there's no pressure to subscribe, those videos will eventually be released. I spent most of February talking about love magic and doing like witchcraft show and tells of various different love spells for the singles, the married folk, the self-love, this and that. But yeah, this was super fun. And thank you, Samuel and Nerdy Warlock, for joining me. And hopefully I will
Always.
see you guys on a live again soon. And thank you all the people in the comments. Like, I'm sorry I couldn't keep up with it very well tonight. This live was supposed to be scheduled for 9:30, but I was taking a cat nap, and Warlock actually had to message me and be like, "Girl, it's 9:40. Where are you?" So, yeah. I'm going to go eat my DoorDash food and talk with my friends off air, but it was so good to see you guys in the comments. We're going to wrap this live up. Okay. Bye-bye.